All right. Okay. So let's begin. As it is 9:30. I just apologize for the competition over here, the drill. Hopefully I'll have to talk really loud. Let's see who's more interesting, the drill or me. Okay. So it's Parshas Vayeishev, which if Parshas wasn't action-packed until now the action really starts. This is the story of Yosef. So let's just quickly run through a general summary of the Parsha, and then we'll get into it a little bit more in depth. So the Parsha begins and sets the scene that Yaakov settles back in Eretz Yisrael. He's come back from Haran, he's had his encounter with Esav, and he settles in Israel, and Yosef is 17 years old, his son Yosef, who is his firstborn son from Rachel. Right? Yaakov had 4 wives, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, and Rachel was his most beloved one, and she didn't have children for many years, and her firstborn son was Yosef. And therefore, it's some literal sort of sense here, that's why Yaakov loved him more than the other sons, and he displayed that favoritism, and he displayed it by buying him a special coat. It was called Ksoinas Pasim, a woolen tunic, and the brothers became extremely jealous. I will see soon more in detail why. He tells them his 2 dreams that he has about everyone bowing down to him, and they say, "Oh, you want to become a king?" And then his father sends him to check on his brothers, and he goes there, and they actually want to kill him. They want to kill him because, as we'll see soon why they wanted to kill him, and in the end, Ruvain stops them from killing him because he's the firstborn son, he's going to be responsible. So he said, let's throw him into the pit instead. Meanwhile, Ruvain goes somewhere else, and there's a sort of a caravan of Yishmaelim passing by, and they sell him, and eventually Yosef gets taken down to Mitzrayim and sold as a slave to a man by the name of Potiphar, who was one of the ministers of Paroi at the time. Then the Parsha interrupts with a story, which we're not going to really say maybe one vart on it, but a sort of a very, very bizarre story of Yehuda and his daughter-in-law Tamar. And the story was that he Yehuda got married, he had 3 sons, Eir, Oinon, and Shelah, and he married off his oldest son to a woman by the name of Tamar, and then he died for a sin, and then he married, and as the law is in Jewish law that if you die childless, then there's a mitzvah called Yibum, which means that the woman is supposed to marry her brother-in-law, in other words, the brother of her deceased husband. Nowadays we don't actually do that, we do the process called Chalitza, which sort of annuls her from that obligation. Either way, so she marries an ex-son, he dies, and Yehuda said, listen, I'm not going to marry you off to my 3rd son, because meanwhile you've killed 2 of them. So, not literally killed them, but obviously you have some sort of bad luck going on over here. So I'm not going to do that. And he sends her back home. But she still is actually not allowed to marry anybody else, because he said, let's wait till Shelah grows up, and then I'll give you Shelah to marry. Meanwhile, Yehuda goes down to where Tamar is. In a very, very bizarre turn of events, she dresses up as a prostitute and sits on the side of the road, and he commits almost what seems to be a sin with her, and then she becomes pregnant. He didn't even realize that this was her because her face was covered, the whole story, and then someone went and told Yehuda, do you know that your daughter-in-law is pregnant? And he said she should be burnt alive. And then she sent a stick back to Yehuda and said, whoever the stick belongs to is the father of the baby. And Yehuda realized it was him, and obviously he took back his death sentence, and in the end she gave birth to 2 children, twins, Peretz and Zerach, which the most bizarre part of the story, as many stories are in the Torah, is that actually from this crazy story comes Mashiach, right? Because David HaMelech actually comes from Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda, and he comes from Peretz. We say every single Friday night, just you say you know, in Friday night we say in L'chadodi, we say Ben Partzi, right? We say, what's the exact sentence? Al Yad Ish, through the man, we're talking about Mashiach, Ben Partzi, who is the son of Peretz. Who's Peretz? The son of Tamar, the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Right? So anyway, that's a whole different shir in its own right. What was Yehuda thinking? Yehuda was a big tzaddik. He wasn't somebody who was just, committing such terrible things. Anyway, that's a whole different shir, but that's the story the Torah tells us. Then the Torah tells us that it goes back to the story of Yosef. How Yosef was taken down to Mitzrayim, and Yosef was very, very handsome. He was very good looking. And Potiphar's wife desired him. And therefore you have this whole other story of Potiphar's wife trying to seduce Yosef, and Yosef refuses. And finally, there was one time when they were alone in the house. We'll get into this story a little bit more in depth later. And she grabs him, and he runs away, and she accuses him of rape, and he gets put in prison. In prison, he meets two people there. And the famous story of the butler and the baker of Paro, you have two dreams, and they don't know the meaning of their dreams, and Yosef interprets their dream. One of them, the interpretation is that they're going to go back to their post to be the butler, and by Paro, the other one, the baker, says you're going to be hanged, and that's exactly what happened. And the Parsha ends off that he asked the butler to intercede on his behalf by Paro, and the butler actually forgot about Yosef. He didn't remember him, he didn't forget about Yosef until 2 years later, and Paroi has dreams, and that's next week's Parsha. So the Parsha is quite a dramatic Parsha this week. And of course, we're coming up to Hanukkah, so let's see what we can see in the Parsha, and perhaps maybe connect something to Hanukkah as well. Okay, so back to the beginning of the Parsha, which is on page 198 in the Chumash, Parshas Vayeishev. So first of all, what was unique about Yosef? Right? So that Yaakov loved Yosef. So what exactly is going on up here? So Rashi tells us that let's first have a look at the pasuk inside actually. So pasuk Aleph, Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz begurei aviv. Yaakov settled in the land of his fathers, be'eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan, which was in the future to become Eretz Yisrael. Then the pasuk says like this: Eile toldos Yaakov. These are the children of Yaakov. Yosef ben Shva Esrei Shana. Yosef was 17 years old. Hayoroye es Echav batzayin. He was a shepherd with his brothers by the flock. V'hunar. He was a youth. Es Bnei Zilpa, with the sons of Bila. Es Bnei Zilpa, the sons of Bila and the sons of Zilpa. Neshei Aviv, his father's wives. That's not what that means. Vayova Yosef esti basom ra el aviem, and Yosef would bring evil reports of them to their father. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this pasuk. First of all, what does it mean? These are the children of Yaakov, and then it says Yosef. Yaakov had 12 sons and one daughter, right? So why are we suddenly only singling out Yosef specifically? So let's have a look at Rashi. Rashi on pasuk Beis. Okay, so that's in the middle of the first column, towards the bottom of the first column. Eila toldos Yaakov. So Rashi gives one interpretation, or more literal interpretation. It says like this. It doesn't mean the children. Ve'eila toldos shel Yaakov. These are the offsprings of Yaakov. Elu yishuveim. These are their settlings. V'gilguleim, and their turns of events. In other words, what it's saying is, this is what happened to the children of Yaakov. This is what happened to them. This is the turn of events that brought them to Mitzrayim. Because how did the Jewish people land in Egypt? Because Yosef was sold in Egypt. That's what the brothers went looking for him there. That's why they moved there, right? So what the pasuk is saying is, these are the children of Yaakov. This is what happened to the children of Yaakov. Ad shebo l'chal yishuv, until they arrived at the stage of permanent residence back in Eretz Yisrael. Sibor Yishaina, the first sort of causative factor over here was that Yosef ben Shva Esrei v'goymer, that Yosef was 17 years old. The first thing that triggered this chain of events that got the Jewish people to go to Mitzrayim was that Yosef was 17 years old, and they didn't like it. His galgalu, Through this Galgul, they went through a chain of events. V'yordul Mitzrayim, and they descended to Egypt. Zeo acher yishul pshute shomikra. This is an explanation which follows the simple meaning of the verse. Li'is davar alifanav, with each word in its proper settings. This is the literal explanation. It says Rashi, Midrash Agoda Doireish, a sort of more deeper explanation. Tala Kosuf Toildois Yaakov B'Yosef. No, it means these are the children of Yaakov. Yosef is a child of Yaakov. Why? Because of several reasons. First of all, Achas, number one, Shekol Atzmai Shel Yaakov Li'Avad Eitzel Lavan Ela Barachel. Why did Yaakov work for Lavan for so many years? For Rachel. Right, end of the day, yeah, he got Leah first, he had to work another 7 years for Rachel, but his whole goal was Rachel. And who was Rachel's firstborn son? Yosef. So therefore, Yosef, he looked at it as his main child, so to speak. That's one idea. Another pshat is that his appearance resembled Yaakov's. He looked a lot like Yaakov. Another thing is, whatever happened to Yaakov, Eira Yosef happened to Yosef. They're almost identical lives. How so? Zen Nistam, this one was hated. V'zu Nistam, this one was hated. Esav hated Yaakov. The brothers hated Yosef. Zeh Achim v'bakish l'Argoi. Yaakov's brother wanted to kill him. V'zeh Achav v'bakish l'Argoi. His brothers wanted to kill him. V'chein Harbe, and similarly, there are many other sort of parallels between the life of Yosef and the life of Yaakov. And therefore it says, Eila Toildois Yaakov. These are the children of Yaakov, Yosef. Yosef sort of was the main child of Yaakov in that everything that happened to Yaakov happened to Yosef as well. Okay. So that's sort of the general idea. But the Parsha starts off with the words Vayeishev. Right? And Rashi says on that, Vayeishev Yaakov, the Yaakov settled. One second. Where did he say that? So I've lost the place there. Here we go. It's the same Rashi. Rashi says that Vayeishev, what does it mean he settled? It means Yaakov, the expression is Bikesh Yaakov Leishev B'Shalva. Yaakov wanted to dwell in tranquility. In other words, he had a hard life until then. His brother wanted to kill him. He was working for his father-in-law for so many years. His father-in-law didn't like him either. He tricked him so many times. He was running away. He was very unsettled. Finally, he's back home. His full family. Now, and also his wife died on the way. Right? In other words, he went through many, many things. Now, finally, he wants to just have a settled life. So what happened? It says that the ordeal of Yosef sprung upon him. In other words, Vayeishev Yaakov, Yaakov wanted to settle, and then what happened? This whole story of Yosef happened. And for the next 22 years, he's in terrible pain and sadness and mourning. The only time Yaakov had a good life was the last 17 years of his life, and he was in Mitzrayim. Then that's when he had a good life. But not here, not at this point. So Yaakov wanted to relax. So what does Hashem say to him? Hashem says, Lo dayon la tzadikim, mashu musuken lem lo'olam haba. Is it not enough for the tzadikim? Literally what it means is that olam haba, the world to come, is good for them. Do they want to dwell peacefully in this world as well? What kind of chutzpah is this? Yaakov Avinu is going to have an unbelievable olam haba in the world to come, a spiritual reward, and you want to have a good life in this world also. So that's why right away, the simple meaning of this is, right away Hashem showed him, no, you're not going to have an easy life in this world, and that's what happened, the story of Yosef happened. Right? So, what exactly is going on over there? First of all, why did Yaakov think that now he's going to have a good life? Based on his track record, he had pretty bad, I don't know if the word is luck, but he didn't have a good life, right? Why did he suddenly think, Bikesh Yaakov Leishev B'Shalva, now it's going to be okay? What happened now that changed? Okay? So the pshat is this. Yaakov knew, and then we can understand, through the answer, we'll understand deeper what Rashi means by, is it not good enough that they have the whole Olam Haba? They have Olam Haba, do they want to have Olam Hazeh as well? Pshat is this. We know that everything that happened to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov was sort of like a blueprint for what's going to happen to the Jewish people over history. And we see this by everything. We see that Avram Avinu went down to Mitzrayim, right? Because of the famine. Sarah got captured. They were afflicted, and Avram left very rich. That's what happened to Avram Avinu. He left Mitzrayim very rich. Same thing happened to the Jewish people. They went down to Egypt because of what? Because of famine, right? Paro sort of captured them. In other words, they were enslaved, and then they were redeemed, and they went out. The Yotzu B'Rechush Gadol. They went out very rich. So what happened to Avram Avinu happened to the Jewish people. Okay. Then there's then Avram Avinu fought against kings. So too, after the Jewish people left Egypt, they went to Israel and they fought against kings, right? Avram Avinu had an encounter with Avimelech, who was the king of Plishtim, right? And the whole thing over there. The Jewish people also suffered from the Plishtim tremendously when they were in Eretz Yisrael, the Philistines. Okay. Then Avram and Yitzchak finally were in Eretz Yisrael. They were settled. That's a siman, that's a sign that the Jewish people will go to Eretz Yisrael and they'll settle in Eretz Yisrael. But then what happens? It says they dig 2 pits and both pits become stuffed. Right? The Plishtim, they stuff the pits, and the Mefarshim explain that those 2 pits resemble the 2 Beis HaMikdash, the 2 temples that were both destroyed. Right? So again, the same thing happening here, right? Then Yaakov goes to Lavan. Why does he go to Lavan? Because he's running away from Esav. We know after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, what brought us into the exile? Edom. Edom is Rome, but it's known as Edom, and traditionally Rome represents the descendants of Esav. So we also went into Golos running away from Esav. Okay. So up until this point in Yaakov's life, we have sort of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Up until this point in the history of our forefathers, we have the going down into Egypt, we have the going out of Egypt, we have going into Eretz Yisrael, we have conquering Eretz Yisrael, we have the first Beis HaMikdash, we have the second Beis HaMikdash, we have Golos. So what's next? What's next in Jewish history? Mashiach, right? So Yaakov thought, just like everything that's going to happen to the Jewish people happens to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So what's going to happen now? He's going to experience a mini Mashiach. In other words, he's going to experience what it will be when Mashiach will come. And then it's going to start. In other words, this is all the blueprint, right? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, it all happened in miniature form. So he thought, I'm also going to have a Mashiach in a miniature form, and then the history will actually start to play out. Then it'll all actually happen. So Hashem told him, no. That's not the way it works. Olam, this is the deep meaning of what Rashi is saying. You want to have it in Olam Hazeh as well. In other words, what it means like this. Olam Haba, the world to come, doesn't only mean the spiritual world to come. It can also mean times of Mashiach. Hashem is saying that is such a great time. That is such a lofty revelation, an unbelievable experience, that the world's not, you can't experience that in a mini way. In other words, that's going to happen when it happens. Now is the time when history begins. Right? Avram Avinu went down to Egypt, now Yosef goes down to Egypt. In other words, up until now was the model, now it starts. Yaakov thought that he's still part of the model. Yaakov thought now he's going to experience Mashiach as a model, like the model of Mashiach. Bikesh Yaakov Leisha B'Shalva. He's going to finally rest. Now he's going to experience the Mashiach, and then Jewish history will start. Then it'll all start to play out in real time. Right? Hashem then says, no. Up until now was the model. Now it begins. Yosef goes down to Egypt. Now, what happened to Avram Avinu going down to Egypt starts to play out with the Jewish people as well. And that was Yaakov that's why he thought he was going to settle. That's why Hashem said, no, that's not the way it works. Mashiach, Olam Haba is Olam Haba. That's deep meaning of what Rashi is saying. The world to come is the world to come. This world is this world. The Avram Avinu, Yitzchak, and Yaakov only modeled what's going to happen to the Jewish people in this world, not in the next world, not in the times of Mashiach. That's going to happen when it happens. That's sort of a deeper idea of what happened there. Okay. Then we have, everyone with me? That makes sense? Melanie, yes? That's a little bit. Sorry, the drill is a little bit disturbing here. Okay. Then we have Yosef. The pasuk says that Yosef came and brought evil reports to their father. Right now, this is a general rule. The whole Chumash Bereshis, needs to be understood in a deeper way, right? There's so many bizarre stories here that everything needs to be understood properly, because part of learning Chumash is knowing this is true. This is true in the whole Chumash, not only in Vayeishev, is that it's Torah shebiksav, it's the written Torah, but there's a lot of gaps here, right? There's a lot of things that need to be inserted here, and that's why we have Torah shebal peh. That's why we have Mefarshim. We have commentaries to explain what's really going on, right? Because especially if you understand who we're talking about Shvatim. We're talking about the Shvatim, the tribes, are called Shiftei Ka, the tribes of God. It's called holy people. Yosef is called Yosef HaTzadik, right? Yosef the Tzaddik. Yaakov, Yehuda, these are righteous people. People not like regular people. So all these stories need to be understood properly, right? It's not on face value. So Yosef comes and says Lashon Hara to his father, right? He tells, even now the truth is that was wrong, right? Because even if something's true, you're still not supposed to say it unless there's a need for it, right? Unless something's dangerous or something. But in the laws of Lashon Hara and the laws of evil talk, you're not allowed to say something negative about something else, about someone else, even if it's true. Now, what did Yosef actually say? So Rashi explains, Yosef said three things. And we see it in the Pasuk and different parts of what happened to Yosef later. The Pasuk says that he was a youth with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. What happened? What happened the Shvatim, says Yosef to his father, would laugh at the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah and call them the children of maids, of maidservants. Right? Because Bilhah and Zilpah were sort of on a lower class, right? They were the maidservants of Yaakov. They became his wives as well. So the other sons, the sons of Leah, would look down at them and laugh at them. You're the sons of maidservants. So Yosef went to and Yosef would sort of encourage them and be with them. That's what it means. He was a youth with them. In other words, he would be with them and stick up for them. And he went to tell his father, this is what they're saying. By the way, we're not talking about little kids here, by the way. Yosef is 17 years old. Yosef was born to Rachel in her old age. They're all like in their, probably in their 40s already. The sons of Leah. Bilhah and Zilpah were the maidservants of Rachel and Leah. I think God and Asher maybe, and Don and Naphtali maybe. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Look last week's Parsha. Yeah. So anyway, so that's one thing he told them. Also very strange. What's going on over there, right? Another thing is that he accused them of eating limbs of a live animal called Eiver Min Achai. Eiver Min Achai, we know that besides for the 613 commandments that were given to the Jewish people, there's also 7 Noahide laws, right? 7 laws which apply to all of mankind, like not to kill, not to steal. One of them is, in fact, the 7th one is Eiver Min Achai, not eating a limb off a live animal, right? You have to actually, in other words, you have to kill the animal before you eat it. You can't eat an animal while it's alive. Parenthetically, that's why it's called the 7 Noahide laws, right? 6 of them were given to Adam, were given to the first human being, right? Why is it called the 7 Noahide laws? Because up until Noach, they weren't allowed to eat meat. Only after the flood did Hashem give them permission to eat meat. And that's when Hashem gave them the 7th law, that when you eat meat, you have to make sure to kill the animal first. Don't eat meat of a live animal. That's why it's known as the 7 Noahide laws. So he accused them of eating meat of a live animal. Also very strange. What's up with that? Right? Okay. The third thing he accused them was having immoral relationships which were forbidden. Okay, also strange. Rashi says that all of these things, Yosef was punished for talking about them. Because when Yosef was sold into slavery, it says that they slaughtered a young goat and they ate it. The brothers ate it. In other words, to celebrate the fact that they got rid of Yosef, on a literal level, celebrate they got rid of Yosef. Yosef was sold as a slave. Right, so that was because he told Lashon Hara that the brothers were calling the other brothers sons of maidservants. And the whole story of Potiphar's wife, that he was accused of abusing her, of raping her, that was a punishment for him saying Lashon Hara about the brothers, that they were having immoral relations. The question is, what actually happened there? Was Yosef lying? Right? To accuse Yosef of lying, he's not going to make up stories, right? On the other hand, to say it's true, how can we say the Shvatim were accused of doing such things? So let's start off with the Eiver Min Achai, eating a limb of a live animal. So there's a very interesting thing. Although the 7 Noahide laws, all of them apply to Jews as well, obviously, right? All of them are part of the 613 commandments. However, there are actually different laws when it comes to a Jew and a non-Jew. This is a sort of a halachic idea. In other words, there's actually a different set of laws here. Although they may look the same, it's the same law. Do not eat a limb of a live animal. But there's different halachas, there's different laws about a Jew and a non-Jew. In fact, many times actually it's stricter when it comes to a non-Jew. What's an example for that? For example, without getting too graphic here and too gory, if anybody's ever been to a place where they shecht animals, you'll know what I'm talking about. Definitely not, okay? I don't recommend it if you get a little bit queasy from these things. But what happens after an animal is shechted, it still moves. Now it's not alive, it doesn't feel any pain, it's not alive. What it is, it's like the nerve system. It's just like an automatic thing. It's still moving. It's called mefarcheses in halacha. It's still moving all over the place. Such an animal, is that alive or not alive? In other words, can I eat such an animal? Right? So for a Jew, it's not considered alive. So now you have other problems. You have to kasher it. I don't know exactly how this would work. But technically, if you ate an animal while it was still shaking after being shechted, for a Jew would not have transgressed this prohibition of eating a limb of a live animal because it's dead, it's not alive. A non-Jew has to be more machmir, has to be more strict in the laws of the 7 Noahide laws. They are not allowed to eat such a limb. They have to wait till it stops moving. Whatever the reason for this is the halacha. So now, what happened was the brothers were eating a limb of a live animal in such a circumstance. They didn't wait till the animal, they obviously loved meat, they couldn't wait till the animal stopped moving, so they ate it right away. Right, now, the question is this, were they Jewish or were they not Jewish? Right? And this is a famous discussion. Now, when you talk about spiritually speaking, of course, Avraham is the first Jew, and as a neshama, and he bequeathed to all of us the qualities of a Jew, that's all true. But when it comes to halachically speaking, there's a whole debate. What was the status of the avos, of our forefathers and the tribes? Were they halachically considered Jewish or not? Because the truth is that the whole idea of halachically being Jewish started at Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, when the Jewish people all converted. Right? They all went to mikveh, they all converted, they all became Jewish. The status of the Jewish nation started at Matan Torah. Right? So it could very well be they had the status of a non-Jew. So this is the machloikes, this is the dispute between Yosef and the brothers. Yosef held that they were Jewish. And therefore he held that what they were doing was wrong. They're eating the limb of a live animal. Sorry. The other way around. The Shvatim held they were Jewish. The tribes held they were Jewish, and therefore even while the animal is still moving, they're allowed to eat it. Because a Jew is allowed to eat an animal while it's still moving as long as it's been killed already. Yosef held that they had the status of a non-Jew. And therefore, he held they're not allowed to eat it. Because if you're keeping the halachas, if you're keeping the laws of a non-Jew, you're not allowed to eat a limb of an animal which is still shaking. And therefore, he held that they were transgressing this commandment of Eiver Min HaChai, of eating a limb of a live animal. This is the halachic dispute between Yosef and the Shvatim. Okay. Alternatively, there's a fascinating idea brought by the Shnei Luchos Abris, that the sons of Leah, because they were very, very holy, they had access to Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah is a book which was given to Adam HaRishon, which has in it the secrets of creation. If you understand what's going on in that book, you can create. Now, none of us understand what's going on over there because we're not Kabbalists, but if you're on the level to understand what's going on over there, you can actually create something. And therefore, the Shvatim, the sons of Leah, understood this, and they were able to create an animal. By virtue of saying different names of God, whatever it says there. I've never learned it, so I don't know, but that's yeah. So according to this, what they did is they actually created an animal using some sort of Kabbalistic formula. And the laws of Eiver Min HaChai doesn't apply to such an animal, because such an animal is not really alive. No, it's not a real animal. It's sort of a spiritual... So Yosef saw the animal looks like a regular animal. What he didn't realize was they actually had created this with some sort of Kabbalistic form. That's one idea. Now, the other accusation of them having forbidden relations, there is one of the forbidden relationships that says in the Torah is that you're not allowed to marry a mother and her daughter. Right? So going back to biblical law, marrying two wives was permitted, then it became forbidden, but it was permitted. However, you're not allowed to marry a mother and her daughter. Okay. However, that could be that only applies to Jews. Now, the laws of forbidden relationships apply to everybody. That's one of the 7 Noahide laws, right? They have to be moral when it comes to relations. However, It could be that halacha of not marrying. Also, could be two sisters, same thing, but a mother and her daughter may not apply. Therefore, the Shvatim, same thing. The Shvatim held that they weren't Jewish, and therefore they married a mother and her daughter. Yosef held they were Jewish, and therefore he accused them of doing something which is forbidden. It's the same sort of idea. Either way, what you see from this is also just two things who hated each other and just made up stories about each other. No, it was actually a real halachic Torah debate between Yosef and his brothers. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What, according to Joseph, made them Jewish? The brothers.
He held that they were Jewish. They were the beginning of the Jewish nation. They were circumcised. They had the status of a Jew.
No,
Right.
but in the first example, he said they weren't Jewish.
No, Yosef held they were Jewish, and therefore they were not allowed. They were.
You said they were not Jewish in the first one.
Yeah, they were not yet.
You're right. So actually, these two explanations don't really fit together. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Either way, that's fine, because that's many commentaries like there are two different commentaries. Okay. All right.
But that doesn't answer why he told his dad that, or does it?
It doesn't really. Maybe you can say that what his intention was, he was trying to get them to stop doing it.
Or to learn.
Yeah, to learn. Yeah. In other words, he could have had good intentions, but it was still on his level wrong, and therefore he was punished. Okay. Then we have the story of Yosef and his dreams. Right? Yosef tells them one dream. What's the dream? They're in the field, and they all have stalks of wheat, and all of their stalks were bearing down to his sheaf, and all their sheaves were bearing down to his sheaf. Okay. What does that mean? They're all going to bow down to him at some point. And there were 11, right? Okay. So all the 11 brothers are going to bow down to him. Then he tells them a second dream. What's the second dream? There's 11 stars and the sun and the moon. Who's the sun and the moon? Yosef understood it to mean Yaakov and Rachel. That they're going to bow down to him, right? After the second dream, the brothers get very angry, and Yaakov tells Yosef off. He says, I don't understand how this dream is even possible, because Rachel's not alive anymore. How's Rachel going to bow down to him? So it ended up being it mean Rachel, it meant one of the other emois, whatever the point is, but Yaakov says it can't be possible. So the question is on Yosef, even without getting into lofty things, didn't he have common sense? Why, after saying the first dream, would he then go and say the second dream? Didn't he see that the brothers were upset after the first dream? What is he, like Dafka going to get them upset? He had a dream, okay? Had an interesting dream, so he told the brothers. But he saw they got upset, so why is he telling them the second dream? Well, what would be the logic to do that, right? So the Orach Chaim explains like this. In the first dream, it was all about the sheaves bowing down to him. People dream a lot of times, they think about during the day. Right? So the brothers just assume that obviously he has fantasies about him being king over them. And that's why he dreamt this at night, that they're all bowing down to him. Okay. Yosef wanted to prove to them that these dreams are not his fantasies. They're actually a sign from heaven. Therefore, what did he do? He told them the second dream. What's unique about the second dream? The second dream had the sun and the moon, which he thought meant Rachel. So he said, how could this be what I'm thinking about during the day? Why would I ever think that my mother, who's not alive, is going to bow down to me? No, I would never have such a fantasy. I would never be fantasizing in the middle of the day that Rachel, my mother, is going to bow down to me if she's not alive anymore. Right? So obviously this is a dream from heaven. I never thought about this before. So if he's trying to tell them that my first dream also wasn't just something I was thinking about during the day that I want to rule over you. No. This is something which Hashem is telling me. And that's why specifically after the second dream is when the brothers got really jealous. Because then they realized it's actually true. Right? First dream was okay, it's a fantasy, big deal. No. But now after the second dream they realized no, this wasn't what he was thinking about. This is a clear sign from heaven, this is going to happen. And that's why they actually got really jealous of it. Just a cute vart, so it says that when he said this dream, so Yaakov says, Ma hachaloim asher chalamta. What is this dream that you dreamt? The word asher chalamta is a little bit extra. Obviously, you dream a dream, right? But what's this dream that you dreamt? Like, it's nonsense, Yaakov's telling him. So, it's a cute vart. They say a story, one time, a Hasidic Rebbe passed away, and no one knew who's going to be the successor. So one guy from the shul comes the next morning and he says that the Rebbe came to me in a dream and he told me that I should be the successor. So the board of the shul said, okay, it's very nice. I'll believe you if the Rebbe came to us in a dream and told him that. But in case it came to you in a dream, right, it's not so believable. That's what Yaakov's telling him. Yaakov's telling him, Ma chaloim asher cholamta, that you dreamt. If your dream is true, they should have dreamt it. right? Let the Shvatim dream it. Why are you dreaming this? Obviously, it's just nonsense, something that you want to do. Okay, that's just a cute idea. All right. Then we have, I want to go further in the story of Yosef and Potiphar. You may have heard this word that I'm going to say, but anyway, it's a very sort of, very, very fascinating idea and a very beautiful idea. So Yosef goes down to Mitzrayim. If you have a look inside, what's page 212, page 214. It says like this, that what happened in Pasuk Zayin, verse 7, that it was after these things, and the wife of his master lifted up her eyes, and she saw Yosef, and she said, Shichva imi, be with me, right? Says the Pasuk, Vayimo'ein, he refused. Vayomer, and he said, Pasuk Ches, and he said, El Eishes Hadoinov, says, my master gave me everything in the house to watch over, but not you. In other words, you're my master, that's not the right thing to do. Every single day she spoke to him, and he didn't listen. What happens? One day, in Pasuk Yud Aleph, it became a day, and it says like this, Vayihi kayoyim hazeh was that day, which the Parshas explained it was like a national holiday. And that's why everyone was out of the house celebrating. But she said she's sick, and therefore she stayed home. Vayovei abaisoi, he came home, lasois malachtoi, to do his work. Ve'ein ish me'anshe abayis shom babayis. And there was no man from the household there. What happens? She grabs his clothing and she says, Shichva imi. And he gets out of his coat and runs away. Right? Now, what happened here? He came home. He came to the house. What was he coming for? So Rashi says like this, the last Rashi on page 214. Says, Rav u'Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel have a dispute. What does it mean that he came to do malachtoi, his work? Chad Omar, one says, malachtoi mamish. Yosef came to do his work, just literally. Chad Omar, one says, no, he came, lasois trochav ima. He came to be with her. He had enough, he couldn't resist anymore. The temptation, you have to understand, he was a 17-year-old boy at the time, right? He was a teenager. There's this woman who's driving him crazy. It was a terrible temptation. So he couldn't resist it anymore. And therefore he said, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to do it. And what happens at the last moment, says Rashi, this comes from the Gemara, his father's face appeared to him. The last moment, his father's face appeared to him, and he realized, how can I do such a thing? And that's why he ran away. Right? What's going on over here? He came to do it, he almost failed, he saw his father's face. So I'll share with you a vart, the part of it, I heard from Rabbi Yossi Jacobson, who's a famous speaker. But part of it I heard from my mentors in yeshiva, sort of combined two things together. So he says like this, the term that's used, that Yosef refused to be with Potiphar's wife, is vayimo'ein, and he refused, right? And by the way, just parenthetically, there's a very interesting note on top of that. It's something called, if you look, it's interesting, it hardly ever appears. It's called a shalsheles, which actually means a chain, it's like a zigzag. It's a very like windy, it goes like on and on. And the idea is that he like constantly refused, like it was a struggle, right? That term appears before. It appears when Yaakov was told that Yosef died. What happens? Page 206. Look at page 206. They come, they bring Yaakov the torn coat with blood on it, and they say, oh, a wild animal attacked him and he's dead. What happens? All of his sons and daughters got up to comfort him. He refused to be comforted. Refused to be comforted. Right? Now, the literal explanation of what's going on over here, sort of the more literal, is that as tragic as a death is and losing a loved one, there's a rule, there's a sort of a nature that Hashem put into a person, that to a certain degree, a person a person never forgets about the loved ones that they lost, but you sort of move on with life to a certain degree. Obviously, there's always the loss is always there, but if Hashem would have created a person that every time they have a tragedy, they lose somebody, they never ever get over it, then the person would suffer their entire life. He would never be able to live, right? So Hashem made a nature that a person is able to, at one point, sort of get up and continue on with their life. Right? Yaakov didn't. Yaakov continued to mourn day in and day out as if it was literally the first day. Why? Because Yosef wasn't dead. Right? Yosef was actually alive, and therefore that nature didn't kick in. Hashem made a nature that you move on after people which are not alive, not people which are alive. Right? What's the deeper explanation here? Deeper explanation here is that Yosef represents somebody who's going down into the depths of impurity. In other words, Yosef represents the child, the Jew, which is in Mitzrayim, which is lost, which you can look at him or her and say, they're not alive anymore. In other words, they're not a Jew anymore. Their soul is not burning anymore. However, Yaakov Avinu vayimoim li'isnachem. Li'isnachem doesn't only mean comforted, it also means to give up. He refused to give up on Yosef. The way Yaakov looked at Yosef, Yaakov represents Hashem, represents Torah, represents the correct way to look at a Jew. The correct way to look at a Jew is you have a Jew who's in Mitzrayim, in the lowest place, the lowest spiritual Mitzrayim, the lowest of the low. He's being tempted. He's about to fail. Who knows what they're going through. And you're able to see their neshama. You're able to see their soul. You're able to look down there and say, I'm not going to give up on you. Because I know that you're still a Yid. No matter what you've been through, no matter what you've been sold into, no matter what you've gone through, you're still a Yid. You still have a neshama. You still have a soul. The reason why Yosef was able to withstand this temptation is because Vayimoim, same word, he refused. In other words, because his father believed in him, because his father saw the neshama, saw the soul, that's why he was able to Vayimoim, the same word, he was able to refuse, he was able to withstand the temptation. And that's a deeper pshat in what Rashi means. That when he came and he was fed up, he said, I can't do this anymore. And he comes into the house and is about to fail. What happens? The expression is, his father's face appears to him. That's what it literally means. However, I once heard a deeper pshat. The way to read it is this. It was appeared to him, it came to him. What does that mean? His appearance. Who's his? Yosef's face appeared to Yosef. Yosef's appearance. But which Yosef? Shel Aviv. The way his father looks at Yosef. Normally we look at ourselves one way, and Yaakov looks at us a different way. We look at ourselves sometimes as a lowly person which sins, which fails, which has temptations, which struggles. But that's the way we look at ourselves. The way we have to look at ourselves and the way we have to look at other people is the way Yaakov Avinu, the way Torah, the way Hashem looks at us. His face, Yosef's face appeared to him, but Shel Aviv, of his father, the way his father looks at Yosef. That's what was appeared to Yosef. And this idea is connected to what the Alter Rebbe explains in chapter 32 of Tanya. So just to give some context, today is a special day. It's Yutes Kislev. It's the 19th of Kislev. Which is, in the Hasidic calendar, one of the greatest days. It's the day when the Alter Rebbe, who was the first Rebbe of Chabad, was released from prison. And it was seen that it wasn't just a physical release of physical danger, it was a sort of a spiritual sign from above that he should continue teaching the secrets of the Torah through Chassidus that he was doing before, that he should do it even more, as all the famous stories tell us. So the Tanya is the Alter Rebbe's sort of foremost work of his Chassidus, and in it he lays out his philosophy. And one of the foundations of Chassidus, of the Alter Rebbe's teaching, started off by the Baal Shem Tov, is this idea of how to look at another Jew, right? Because superficially you see another Jew, and not always do they look Jewish, not always do they look like they're acting like a Jew is supposed to act, right? In chapter 32 of Tanya, which 32 is just an interesting thing, it happens to be this chapter, but chapter 32 is Lamed Beis, which means leiv, heart. Right? This is like the heart of Tanya. This is the essence of it all. He explains over there how to come to what it says in the pasuk, V'ahavta l're'acha kamoicha, that you shall love your fellow Jew as yourself. The famous question is, how can I love someone else as myself? Right? You love yourself because you're yourself. And he also asks another question. There's a famous story about Hillel, right? The convert who goes to Hillel and says, teach me the whole Torah on one foot. And Hillel says, don't do to others what you don't want done to you. This is the whole Torah, everything else is an explanation. Right? So it's very nice. What does that even mean? Right? So when I keep kosher, that's connected to loving someone else as myself. Right? What's the connection? What does it mean that this is the whole Torah? It's a big part of the Torah. You could say it's a foundation of the Torah, as Rabbi Akiva says. Rabbi Akiva says, Zeh klal godol b'Torah. It's a fundamental rule in the Torah. Hillel says even more than that. He says, loving someone else as yourself, which he says in a negative way, don't do something else we don't want done to you, that is the whole Torah. Everything else is just an explanation. What does that even mean, right? You understand that maybe you can say it's the whole Torah in regards to the laws between man and his fellow man, right? In other words, between human beings. But the mitzvahs between man and God, keeping Shabbos, kosher, what does that have to do with loving a fellow Jew as yourself? So the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, Perek Lamed Beis, that what does it mean? How do you love another Jew? Because we are comprised of two parts. We have a body and we have a soul. If you look at the body, we're all separate. We're all separate beings, we're all unique, we're all different, we're all separate, and we're all independent, we have nothing to do with each other. Right? If you're body focused, in other words, if you're physical focused, if you're materialism focused, it's impossible to love another Jew as yourself. You can still love them, but not as yourself. Why? Because if you look through the lens of the body, you're two separate beings. How can you love someone else as much as you love yourself? However, if you're soul-centric, if you're soul-focused, if you're neshama-focused, the neshama of every Jew is really one. Because the neshama of every Jew, as he explains in chapter 2, is that is a chelek elikam imal mamash. They're literally a part of Hashem. We all come from the same God. We all are the spark of the same God. So we're all the same, exactly the same. Deep down, in our very essence, we're the same being. And therefore, if you live with your neshama, if you live with your soul, then you look at another Jew. What do you see? You see the soul. You don't see the body. Same word. What do you see when you look at Yosef? When you look at a Yosef? When you look at a child who's in Mitzrayim, you look at a Jew, doesn't necessarily be a child in years, but a Jew is a child spiritually, struggling. What do you see? Do you see the body? Do you see someone who's just immersed in temptation and just doesn't know what to do with himself? Or do you see a precious neshama, a tired yid, a precious Jew? The only way you can do that is if you're soul-focused, if you're neshama focused. That's why Yaakov saw that in Yosef, because Yaakov was neshama focused. And that's why it's the whole Torah. Because the whole Torah, what's the purpose of the Torah? Why do we keep Torah? The whole Torah is to make us neshama focused. That is the whole Torah. The whole Torah is to reveal the connection between us and Hashem. That is the Torah. Torah is to reveal our neshama, to reveal our soul, the bond that we have between us and Hashem. Every mitzvah, keeping Shabbos, keeping kosher, what's the purpose of all these things? The purpose of all these things is to reveal that spark, that divine spark within us, that connection to Hashem, our neshama. And that's why the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, the mitzvah of loving a fellow Jew as ourselves, that's the whole Torah. Because the only way to really love a fellow Jew as ourselves is to see the neshama, to see the soul. When you see the soul, then you've now fulfilled the purpose. In other words, you've revealed the purpose of the whole Torah, of every mitzvah. Whether the mitzvah is between man and man, between man and God, that is the whole Torah, to reveal the neshama, to reveal the essence of what it means to be a Jew. And that's the deeper pshat. The deeper pshat here is that Yaakov saw the depth of Yosef, what Yosef really was. And that's what helped Yosef go through those struggles in Mitzrayim. And it's not only Yosef, but it's all of us. The way we look at ourselves, the way we look at another Jew, that's the perspective we need to have. Yeah, everyone with me? Okay. Just stand off, try to connect a little bit to Chanukah and the Parsha. So sometimes Chanukah is actually in Parshas Vayeishev, not this year, but it's still before Chanukah. Okay, so it's still the Shabbos before Chanukah, so obviously it has a connection. So when they threw Yosef into the pit, it says like this. Threw him into the pit. On page 204. Pasuk 24, verse Chaf Dalet. Page 204. says, Vayikachuhu, they took him, Vayashlichu oisei haboyer, they threw him into the pit. Va'haboyer reik, and the pit was empty. Ein boy moyim, there was no water. Right, now we know everything in the Torah is exact. So the obvious question is, if it's empty, obviously there's no water. Why do I have to say it was empty and there was no water? So the Gemara explains, this is a Gemara, just to give some context, there's no such thing as tractate Chanukah in the Talmud. There's something called tractate Megillah, something called tractate Shabbos. There's no tractate Chanukah, which is a different shir in its own right, why not? We'll discuss about the Gemara shir. Anyway, so where do we know all the laws of Chanukah from? It comes up in Masechta Shabbos, tractate Shabbos, where it talks about the laws of lighting Shabbos candles. And typical Gemara style is talking about the laws of Shabbos candles, so it gets involved in the laws of Chanukah candles. That's why we have pages in the Gemara about Chanukah candles. Over there, it mentions a teaching, let's get the name of the person. It mentions a teaching from Rav Kahana, Rav Kahana said, that Rav Nosson Bar Minyumi expounded, sort of taught in the name of Rab Tanchum, a teaching about Chanukah. Now, many times when the Gemara brings something in the name of somebody, what it will do is then bring a different teaching in the name of the same person, which is totally unrelated. Right? So, because it's the same person, so it brings it. The simple reason for that probably is because you have to understand all these things were taught by heart, right? And it was just a good system of remembering something. So if you want to remember something, so you knew who said it, so okay, this person said this, he also said that, right? So when the Gemara says a law of Chanukah, after that it brings a different teaching from Rav Kahana, who said that Rav Nosson Bar Minyumi expounded in the name of Rav Tanchum, that what? It brings this pasuk, unrelated to Chanukah, unrelated to anything it said before that. The pit was empty and there was no water. And it says, obviously, if it's empty, of course, there's no water. So he says, no, pshat is, there was no water, but there were snakes and scorpions. So it was empty. But you would think, if we'll just say it was empty, you would think it was literally empty of nothing. It says, no, it was empty. In what? In the fact that there was no water, but there was still snakes and scorpions. Now, again, the Gemara does this many times, that it brings a random teaching, not connection. But it would be nice to say there is a connection, because it comes up in the laws of Chanukah. So maybe there is a connection between this and Chanukah. So what's the pshat v'haboy reik ein boy mayim spiritually? The pit is empty and there's no water, but the snakes and scorpions. Because in Yiddishkeit, in avodas Hashem, in serving Hashem, there's no such thing as empty. You're always full with something. You're either full with good things or you're filled with bad things, right? A person is not an empty vessel. You can't stop thinking, right? There's no such thing as stopping to think. You either have good thoughts or bad thoughts, right? You can't. Right? That's the way it works. And the same thing is, especially when you're serving Hashem. I will see soon why it's like this, but you're either full with holiness, or you're empty. But you're empty only in the way that there's no water, but the snakes and scorpions. In other words, there are negative things there. There's no water there. Water, we'll see, represents Torah, but there's no snakes and scorpions there. As soon as you're empty with good things, suddenly you become full with bad things. The Baal Shem Tov explains in the pasuk we say in Shema, "V'sartem va'avadetem," which means v'sartem means you stray from the path, va'avadetem elekim acherim, and you serve other gods. He says this happens right away. V'sartem, as soon as you stray from the path, va'avadetem elekim acherim, you're right away serving idols. There's no middle road. You're either serving God or you're serving idols. Okay. So in that idea, that makes sense, because if you're not serving Hashem, that's a fundamental thing. You're not serving Hashem, so who are you serving? You're obviously serving either yourself or idols, which is all the same thing, right? What's the pshat? Va'boy reik ein boy mayim. Because there's no water, therefore the snakes and scorpions. What's water? Water represents Torah. Right? We know Torah is compared to many things. One of them is water. The psukim is compared to water. Why is Torah compared to water? So one of the explanations is, just like water goes from a high place to a low place, so too, it says, Torah ein miskaimim ela b'mi shedaitoi shvela. Torah only works, you can only learn Torah if you have a humble mind. Just like water goes low, so in order to learn Torah, you need to go low. You can't have gaiva, you can't have a lot of ego, you need to approach it with humility in order for it to work. The The question is, Vayeishev, now we point to that explanation, right? Ein boy mayim, there's no mayim. It doesn't mean that there's no Torah. It just means there's no humility when it comes to Torah. That's what water represents, right? Humility. So why does that mean there's going to be snakes and scorpions? So you're not so humble. Doesn't mean that that's terrible. Maybe you just learn Torah without humility. Is it that bad? Right? You're still learning Torah. So why are we suddenly calling it snakes and scorpions? Why the extreme here? Right? So what's the idea? So it's 2 minutes here just to finish the idea. Yeah. So the idea is this. Because Torah is not just an intellectual exercise. When it comes to other wisdoms, you also need to be humble. You need to be humble to learn anything. A person thinks they know everything, you're never going to learn, right? But that's just, in order to learn, you need to have humility. But it's not like it's not like an essential part of it. It's just like a prerequisite. In order to have knowledge, you need to be humble. When it comes to Torah, it's not like that. Torah is not human intellect. Torah essentially is beyond us. Fundamentally, Torah is Hashem's chachma, it's Hashem's wisdom. Right? In order for a human being, which is human intellect, finite, limited intellect, to understand Hashem's wisdom, we need to put ourselves on the side. If we approach it with ourselves, with our ego, with human intellect, it's not going to work, because human intellect and Torah is two different things. Torah is godliness. Yeah, Hashem allowed us to understand it with our intellect. But we need to put aside our own human biases, our own human approaches, our own human attitudes, and learn Torah totally subservient to Hashem. Right? Like we say in davening, "V'nafshi ka'ofar lakol tiyah," we say our soul should be like dust. And then we say, "Psach libi b'soirasecha," open up my heart for your Torah. What's the connection to these two things? Because in order to open up your heart for Torah, you need to be like dust. You need to be humble. You need to come with the approach that I know nothing, and Hashem's going to teach me. Because Hashem knows. It's Hashem's intellect. Because it's so, and that's the pshat. Just like water goes from a high place to a low place, so too when a person learns Torah, they need to be humble. What does that mean? Because Torah didn't start here. Torah starts in a very high place. Torah starts in Hashem's mind, so to speak, in Hashem's intellect. And therefore when we learn it, we need to be humble. And that's why, v'haboy reik ein boy mayim. If there's no water, if there's no humility when it comes to Torah, there's going to be snakes and scorpions. It's impossible to learn Torah properly without humility, without the attitude that it's not about me, without the attitude that I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to understand what Torah says. I'm not trying to put my own biases, my own agendas into Torah. No, you have to fully put your ego on the side and understand Torah. Because Torah is Hashem's wisdom, it's not my wisdom. Hashem allows me to understand it. If you don't have that, right away you can learn Torah totally wrong, and you can actually come to a conclusion which is the exact opposite to what Torah wanted you to come to. Right? And that's next to Chanukah. We'll end with this. We say in the Allah Nisim by Chanukah, we say that the Yevonim, the Greeks, wanted us to forget Torah. Right? But we don't say to forget Torah. We say La'ashkicham Torah secha. They wanted us to forget your Torah. They didn't mind. We learn Torah. Learn Torah is another subject. Their problem was that it was Torah secha, that it was Hashem's Torah, that it was godliness. That was their problem. And that's why they made the oil impure. They didn't get rid of the oil. They just contaminated the oil. Oil represents intellect for whatever reason. The idea behind that is they didn't mind, learn Torah, study, be an intellectual nation. That's great. The Greeks were great philosophers. Unbelievable. The problem is they wanted it to contaminate the oil. They wanted to take the godliness out of the exercise. Oh, that's that's a disaster. For that we have to fight. For that we have to have Mesiras Nefesh, like the story of Chanukah, and win over the Greeks and learn Torah as Torah should be learned. Next week, on the 25th of December, starts the summer learning program at Bina, and that goes for the whole week, from 10 o'clock in the morning.